I've had a lot of requests from you guys to play around with the Friedman BE and HBE in the Atomic Amplifier, so let's do just that today. I've got my Gibson Les Paul plugged in. This is the Cherry Sunburst with the crazy top that, if you've been following the channel, that I've been pulling out pretty recently. It basically has some PAF style pickups in it by Martin A. Smith here in Western Australia. So that's the guitar. It's in standard tuning, going straight into the amplifier. Let's dial up one of these models. Let's start with the Friedman BE. And for the cab, you can use the matching cab, but for me, I always go to my trusty old impulse that I made myself of my 4x12, this one right here, which I have shared. I will also put up a link to this one. One thing about this impulse is I didn't normalize it before I bumped it in, so you have to turn the level up quite a bit if you are using that one. So starting from there, I'll set the level to 18 dB, and then I'm going to set the roll off, this is the high cut, to about 8K, and that should sound pretty good. And I'm not going to do anything else just yet. We're going to have a listen to the raw sound of the guitar, and the Friedman BE model at stock settings sounds like this. Which is a pretty cool rock tone happening right there. I believe, I've never played a real Friedman amp, unfortunately, but I believe there's sort of like setup guidelines for those. They normally tell you to sort of crank the bass and the mids from about 5. So let's just start with that and have a listen to how that kind of changes the sound, and then we'll dial it in for a few different styles. It's kind of like a slightly gainier, thicker version of an AC/DC sort of tone. And honestly, that's a pretty good straight up rock tone. If we take a boost, like the Tube Screamer, and set the drive to 0 and level all the way up, we get this. Which sounds pretty good. I might just turn the tone up, say to about 70%, and then you get this. Which sounds pretty darn good, I think. One thing that I like to do with these particular blocks is basically apply a little bit of post EQ. So what we're going to do, we'll go to parametric EQ number 1, and what we're going to do is set it to be a high pass filter, and I'm going to set the frequency to 0.1, let's type it in here, basically to 100 hertz, so 0.1 kilohertz. And then when I kick that in, that is just going to take a little bit of boom out of the bottom end. Much better. It doesn't have that boomy low end. With this particular IR, I've covered this in some of my other videos, but I find cutting at about 3.3K. So we'll do that with a peaking EQ, and I'll just bring the level down by about 2 dB with a tight Q, and then also at about 5K. So let's do 5. Yeah, that's close enough. And we'll bring the level down a little bit more and set the Q there. So this is what all of these cumulatively do. I didn't have this one set to peaking there, but essentially all I'm doing is pulling out a couple of really harsh frequencies in the IR here with these two blocks, and then this is just a high pass filter there. And in the cab block, we have used the roll-off, which is a low-pass filter, to basically tune the amp and the IR. That's a pretty happening rock sound for me. Like, I could go and do a classic rock covers gig with this, and if I roll my guitar volume down to about 7, you get this. which is way too much gain for that song. If I turn the boost off though, you get this. That's just with the guitar volume control. So the way I would set that up for, that kind of gig is essentially, use the boost for my lead. So when I have the volume control all the way up and the boost on, I get this. With the boost off, it's my rhythm sound. And then roll my guitar volume down a little bit for more of a sort of crunchy, clean sound. So I like that one a lot for that kind of sound. What I would then do is maybe add a little bit of plate reverb. Say, bring the level down quite a bit, you get this. That's really, really nice. You can play around with the master volume control and the gain, obviously, to get some different gain staging stuff. With the master a little bit higher, and what I will do is bring the overall level of the unit down just a little bit from the front panel. You get this. Which kind of gets a bit chewier and a bit saggier, which is nice for the classic rock thing. And if you bring the master volume down, and what I will do is go to the amp block and just bring the level up a bit. You sort of get more of a tight, defined, articulate sound, especially if you push the gain. A little bit of winger right there. That's kind of, it's got a bit of a Red Beach vibe happening there. So that's how I would set that one, I guess, for a little bit more of a sort of like 90s modern thing. Crank the master and bring the gain down if you're going for more of a classic rock thing. So that's the BE. Really like that. The HBE is basically the thicker version of all of that. With the same settings, you get this. Which is really, really cool for lead stuff. If you wanted more of a sort of chunky, I guess, scoop mid thing, push the treble and the presence and bring the mids out. Maybe back the gain off a little bit as well, and you get this. Which is really, really cool for metal stuff. That's probably the amp I would use, probably over the Recto. I'll do another video with the Recto, but this definitely has that sort of Recto quality, but it's a little bit tighter, almost like a cross between a Recto, a Mark Series, and a Marshall at those settings. And the trick there for any sort of like really tight stuff is keep the master volume low. If you want more of a kind of like, more of that sort of thrack happening, turn the master volume up. So that would be how I would set it for like a metal sound. If I was going for sort of like a lead thing, I would probably crank the mids and back the treble off a little bit, and maybe use like a different boost, like try the overdrive, which is this one. And then add some delay. Let's do this. One of my favorite delays is a straight up analog delay, but what I like to do is blend in two voices. So we'll set them both to 0, and I'll set the feedback on, well actually before I do that, I'll set 1 delay to a dotted eighth, 1 delay to a quarter. And for the dotted eighth, this is a shorter delay, so I'll set it to 30%. And for the quarter, this is a longer delay, so I'll set that to 20%. And we'll get an equal amount of feedback on each of them. Let me just sort of tap in a tempo. And this should give us a really, really wide, lush stereo delay. The only thing with that one is it's almost too subtle, so instead of the analog delay, you might want to try the tape delay. But the tape delay for me is a bit thin sounding, so you can also just try the standard digital delay and turn the high cut down, say, to about 4K. So you get this. There you go. However, now the level's way too high, so I would back that off. Or we could use the ducker down here if we like. That's pretty cool. You can also add some diffusion, which does this. I like that quite a lot. One last thing, let's go full 80s on this for a second. I'm going to come here to the routing section and we are going to select the pitch shifter and we are going to change where this is in the circuit. We're going to move this guy behind the amp and we'll do some micro shift stuff. So let's do that. Here, we'll hit post and we'll turn it on. Then we've got it set to pitch shifter. I'm not going to use any of the main levels. What we're going to do is go down here to the micro tuning section. So basically leave all of this as stock, and what I'm going to do is I'll just go say 10 cents plus or minus 10 cents on either side, and then I'm going to pan them hard left and hard right, and I'm going to set the mix to about 50% on each of them, which gives you this mega wide sound. I'll turn the echo off and you get this. Yeah, that is hitting the spot in a big way for me. One last trick, instead of using a boost, you might want to do some pre-EQ. Basically set this to peaking again, and I'll leave the frequency at 1K, and I'll just push about 6 dB at 1K. This is going to give you a very 80s style pre-boost, and I'll set the low cut, say to about 100 Hertz. So you get this with it off and then on. And for a sort of 80s thing, that might be just a little bit too saturated, in which case you can basically just go to the amp and dial the gain back and you get this. Which is beautiful for rhythm work. So that's basically an overview of the Friedman BE and HBE. The trick here is crank the bass in the mids and go easy on the treble, unless you want to do like a kind of thrash thing, in which case basically just pull some more mid-range out and compensate with treble and presence. If you want tightness, bring the master down. If you want more of a saggy, loose kind of feel, turn the master up, and most importantly, go and have some fun with this thing because they really do sound excellent. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all real soon.